Have you ever thought about how Abraham, the patriarch of the world's three major religions, is viewed through the lenses of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam? In the video Just Secrets of Abraham, the patriarch seen through three faiths, we will uncover how each of these traditions interprets the life and legacy of Abraham, revealing secrets that can enrich your spiritual and historical understanding. In this video, we'll explore the fascinating stories and teachings surrounding Abraham, a man whose faith and obedience shaped the course of history. You'll learn how Judaism celebrates his covenant with God, how Christianity sees him as a precursor of faith in Christ, and how Islam honors him as an exemplary prophet. This interfaith journey will not only broaden your knowledge but also strengthen your own faith, showing the deep spiritual connection between these traditions. Curious to discover what makes Abraham such a central and revered figure? Want to understand how his life can offer valuable lessons for your own spiritual journey? Then stay with us and dive into this deep and revealing exploration. Get ready to be inspired and find new perspectives that can transform the way you see and live your faith. Leave a like and subscribe so more people can receive this message. Let's uncover the secrets of Abraham together. Abraham in Christianity. Abraham holds an important place in Christianity as a model of faith. He is seen not only as the patriarch of the Hebrews, but also of all believers. In the New Testament, Abraham is frequently mentioned as an example of someone who fully trusted in God, even when the promises seemed impossible. This unwavering trust in God is central to the Christian understanding of faith. In the New Testament, Abraham appears multiple times, showing his importance in Christian theology. One of the most notable places he is mentioned is in the genealogy of Jesus, found in the Gospel of Matthew. Here, Abraham is cited as an ancestor of Jesus, highlighting the continuity between the promises made to Abraham and their fulfillment in Christ. This directly connects Jesus to the promises made to Abraham, reinforcing the idea that Jesus is the fulfillment of these promises. Beyond the genealogy, Abraham is mentioned in several Pauline letters. In Romans, Paul uses Abraham as an example of justification by faith. He argues that Abraham was justified by his faith even before the law was given, showing that justification comes by faith and not by works. Paul writes, Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. Romans 4:3, emphasizing faith as the means of attaining righteousness before God. In the book of Hebrews, Abraham is highlighted again as a model of faith. Chapter 11 of Hebrews, often called the Faith Hall of Fame, includes Abraham as an example of someone who obeyed God and trusted in his promises, even without seeing their immediate fulfillment. Abraham is praised for leaving his homeland and living as a foreigner in the Promised Land, trusting that God would fulfill his promises. Theologically, Abraham is seen as a precursor of Christian faith. His willingness to trust God and follow his instructions, even when they didn't make human sense, is seen as an example for all believers. Abraham's faith is considered the model for how Christians should trust in God and his promises. The importance of Abraham in the doctrine of justification by faith is central to Christianity. This doctrine teaches that believers are justified, or made righteous before God, not by their works, but by faith in Jesus Christ. Abraham is cited as an example of this justification by faith, showing that from the beginning, a right relationship with God is based on faith. Abraham is also important for understanding God's promise to bless all nations. In Galatians, Paul argues that the blessing promised to Abraham is fulfilled in Jesus Christ, and that all who have faith in Christ are children of Abraham. This expands the promise of Abraham beyond the Jews to include all believers, highlighting the universality of the Christian message. In summary, Abraham is a central figure in Christianity, seen as a model of faith and a precursor of justification by faith. His actions and trust in God are examples for believers of how to live a life of faith. Through the references in the New Testament, Abraham connects the promises of the Old Testament with their fulfillment in Jesus Christ, showing the continuity of God's plan for the salvation of all people. Abraham in Judaism. Abraham is a central figure in Judaism, known as the Patriarch of the Hebrews. He is considered the first of the three patriarchs, along with his son Isaac and his grandson Jacob. Abraham's story begins in Ur of the Chaldeans, where God calls him to leave his homeland and go to an unknown destination. Abraham obeys, demonstrating unwavering faith and a willingness to follow the divine will, making him an example of devotion and obedience to God. In the Torah, the major events of Abraham's life are narrated in great detail. The first significant event is God's call for Abraham to leave his land and go to the land of Canaan. God promises Abraham that he will be the father of a great nation, and that all the families of the earth will be blessed through him. This call marks the beginning of Abraham's journey as the founder of the Hebrew people and as a man of faith. Another crucial event in Abraham's life is the promise of offspring. Despite his wife Sarah being barren and both being old, God promises Abraham that he will have a son. This promise is fulfilled with the birth of Isaac, who becomes the second patriarch. The story of Isaac's birth is a testament to God's faithfulness to his promises and Abraham's faith in trusting the divine plan, even when it seemed impossible. The covenant between God and Abraham is another important point. God makes a covenant with Abraham, promising him that his descendants will be as numerous as the stars in the sky and that they will inherit the land of Canaan. As a sign of this covenant, God commands the circumcision of Abraham and all the men in his household. This practice becomes a perpetual commandment for Abraham's descendants, symbolizing the special relationship between God and the Hebrew people. Abraham's significance in Judaism goes beyond his personal story. He is seen as the founder of monotheism, the first to recognize and worship a single true God. Abraham's faith in one God and his willingness to obey this God serve as a model for Jews throughout the centuries. His life and actions are often remembered and celebrated as examples of piety and unwavering faith. Abraham is also fundamental to the concept of the chosen people. God chooses Abraham and his descendants to be a special people, dedicated to divine service and destined to be a light to the nations. This idea of divine choice is deeply rooted in Jewish identity and the mission to be an example of justice and holiness to the world. Abraham's connection to Israel is another crucial aspect of his legacy. God promises Abraham that the land of Canaan will be given to his descendants. This promise is seen as the foundation for the historical and spiritual connection of the Jewish people to the land of Israel. Throughout history, Jews have looked to the promises made to Abraham as a source of hope and inspiration for their return and establishment in the land of their ancestors. In summary, Abraham is a central figure in Judaism, revered as the Patriarch of the Hebrews, a model of faith and obedience, and the founder of an eternal covenant with God. His story, as narrated in the Torah, offers profound lessons about the importance of faith, divine promise, and the identity of the Jewish people as God's chosen people, with a special connection to the land of Israel. Abraham in Islam. In Islam, Abraham is known as Ibrahim and is one of the most important and respected prophets. He is considered a model of faith and obedience to God. The story of Abraham in the Quran emphasizes his devotion and the many tests he faced to demonstrate his faith. Muslims see Ibrahim as an example to follow and a symbol of total submission to God's will. Abraham's life, as narrated in the Quran, includes several significant events. One of the most notable is his rejection of his people's idolatry and the destruction of their idols, showing his dedication to monotheism. Another crucial event is when God commands Abraham to sacrifice his son, an extreme test of his faith. At the last moment, God replaces the son with a ram, accepting Abraham's obedience. This event is commemorated by Muslims during Eid al-Adha. Another important story in the Quran is the construction of the Kaaba. God commands Abraham and his son Ishmael to build the Kaaba in Mecca as a place of worship. The Kaaba is considered the house of God and the focal point of Islamic pilgrimages, Hajj. This event highlights the importance of Mecca in Islam and the historical connection the city has with Abraham. The sacrifice of his son is one of the most significant moments in Abraham's life. This story demonstrates Abraham's total submission to God's will, something that is deeply valued in Islam. During Eid al-Adha, Muslims commemorate this act of obedience by sacrificing an animal, usually a ram, in remembrance of Abraham's sacrifice. Abraham is a model of faith and obedience for Muslims. His life and actions are seen as an example of how a true believer should live. He is considered the patriarch of the prophets and one of the 5 great prophets of Islam, alongside Noah, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad. Eid al-Adha, or the Festival of Sacrifice, is one of the biggest celebrations in the Islamic calendar. This festival commemorates Abraham's willingness to sacrifice his son in obedience to God. During Eid al-Adha, Muslims sacrifice an animal and distribute the meat among family, friends, and those in need, remembering Abraham's act of faith and promoting charity. The city of Mecca is of great importance in Islam due to its connection with Abraham. The Kaaba, built by Abraham and Ishmael, is the place towards which Muslims turn during their daily prayers. Additionally, the pilgrimage to Mecca, Hajj, is one of the 5 pillars of Islam and an obligation for every Muslim who has the physical and financial ability to undertake it. Abraham's legacy in Islam is profound and enduring. He is revered not only as a prophet, but also as a symbol of faith and devotion. His stories and actions continue to inspire millions of Muslims around the world. Abraham is an important link that connects Jewish, Christian, and Islamic traditions, highlighting his significance as a central figure in the religious history of humanity. Comparisons between the faiths. Abraham is a central figure in the 3 major monotheistic religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. He is revered as a patriarch and an example of faith and obedience to God. Despite differences in narratives and interpretations, there are many common aspects among these traditions that highlight Abraham's importance. All 3 faiths see Abraham as a model of unwavering faith. In Judaism, he is the founder of the Hebrew people and the first to establish a covenant with God. In Christianity, he is viewed as a precursor to faith in Jesus Christ. In Islam, Ibrahim, is considered a prophet who fully submitted to God's will. In all traditions, his willingness to sacrifice his son is seen as the ultimate act of obedience. The story of the sacrifice of his son is central to all 3 religions, although with some variations. In Judaism and Christianity, the son Abraham was prepared to sacrifice is Isaac. In Islam, it is generally accepted that it was Ishmael. Despite this difference, the act of faith and the divine intervention are common aspects that reinforce the importance of obedience to God. A notable difference is how each tradition views Abraham's mission. In Judaism, Abraham is the father of the Israelites and the recipient of God's promise regarding the land of Canaan. In Christianity, he is seen through the lens of the New Testament, which highlights his faith as an example for all believers. In Islam, Abraham is also the builder of the Kaaba in Mecca and an example of total submission to God, with a focus on the unity of all prophets. The scriptures of each religion present slightly different narratives about Abraham. In Genesis, Abraham is introduced as the patriarch of the Israelites and the first to establish a covenant with God. In the New Testament, he is cited as an example of faith, especially in the Epistle to the Hebrews. In the Quran, Abraham's story includes details not found in the Bible, such as the construction of the Kaaba with Ishmael and his struggle against idolatry. Abraham has had a profound impact on the culture and religious practice of each tradition. In Judaism, he is remembered during daily prayers and festivals such as Rosh Hashanah. In Christianity, Abraham's faith is often cited in sermons and Bible studies. In Islam, Abraham is a central figure in the Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca and is remembered during Eid al-Adha, the festival of sacrifice. Abraham's figure unites the 3 religions while also highlighting their differences. He serves as a bridge between them, showing that all share a common heritage of faith and obedience to God. However, the different interpretations of his life and legacy also reflect the diverse theological and cultural paths each religion has followed. Today, the figure of Abraham is used to promote interfaith dialogue and mutual understanding. By recognizing Abraham as a common spiritual ancestor, Jews, Christians, and Muslims can find common ground to discuss their beliefs and work together for a more harmonious world. Abraham, therefore, not only shaped the religious and cultural practices of his time, but continues to influence the pursuit of peace and unity among religions.